I'd like to welcome you to the second day of Conceptions of Empirical Success. Conference convened in honor of Bill Harper. The second day is going to end with a party at Bill's house, to which he wants me to emphasize you're all invited. There's a map on the back of the program. I'm thrilled to be here because I'm a big fan of Bill. I know I'm not alone in this because so many people traveled here on Thursday from southeastern Michigan. A single car couldn't contain them. One of those travelers is Alan Gibbard, today's first speaker. The Richard B. Brandt, Distinguished Professor, University Professor of Philosophy at the University of Michigan. His title is Alien Probability.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored and delighted to be here to give Bill some inadequate token of recognition. I'm going to talk about, I kept changing the title, but what I'm going to be talking about is a couple of kinds of epistemic expressivism. So the idea of expressivism is that we can elucidate certain meanings by saying what states of mind they express. So I think of Ayer's view that moral statements express approval or disapproval as setting the model, although I'll be elaborating on what Ayer thought was possible. So his emotivism had it that stealing is wrong is an expression of disapproval of stealing. Now, epistemic expressivism, as the term is used, really covers two separate subjects. One is epistemic modals and the like. My view is that these are expressive of partial credence. So if I say it might rain, I'm expressing a state of having non-negligible credence in rain. And this is a view that Seth Yeltsin has developed to an admirable degree, and Eric Swanson has views that are similar, although I don't have it straight yet, which things of his I am repeating, which things I disagree with, which things he hasn't pronounced on. But I want to contrast this with a certain kind of probability statement, a kind that I think concerns warrant for credence, or what degree of credence is justified. And the idea, the expressivism for warrant, is that the word warrant is used to express acceptance of norms, or more complexly, restrictions on states that involve the acceptance of norms. So some main points that I'm going to be making are these. That at least two different deflationary conceptions of truth apply in these two domains. One I'm going to be calling bare deflationary truth, and the other I'm going to be calling full deflationary truth. I'm going to suggest, and I think this accords with Seth Yeltsin, that assertions propose states of mind to share. And these states of mind are only sometimes full belief in propositions. If I had time, which I don't think I will, I would also talk about the idea that claims about meaning are themselves normative, so that the claims that I'm making are normative claims. That claims about meaning concern warrant for states of mind, where, once again, warrant is understood expressivistically in terms of states of mind expressed. So epistemic expressivism has two senses. In one sense, it's a theory of concepts in normative epistemology, so concepts like that of warrant for belief, reason to believe, epistemic justification. So the other, well, I want to give an expressivistic treatment of these terms and concepts. In my version, terms like warrant, reason, justification express aspects of plans for credal states in a special sense of plan that I'll be saying more about. And on the other hand, epistemic expressivism can be the theory of epistemic modals and the like. So examples would be maybe it will rain, probably it will rain, surely it will rain, it might rain. And these, I'll be saying, express aspects of one's credences, in David Lewis's sense of degrees of belief or credence or subjective probabilities. So let me talk a little bit about the warrant for credal states on this view. By the way, I'm pretty much laying out a set of views, some of which are more or less standard and widespread, and some of which aren't. Occasionally, I'll argue in a desultory way for things that I say, but mostly this is trying to paint a possible picture. Okay, so I want to say that we can apply this expressivistic approach to theory of meaning to credal states, like having at least a non-negligible degree of belief, and also that we can apply it to probability statements understood as normative statements. So let me say something about warrant for credal states, normative claims about what I'm calling probability. So suppose I talk about the probability of rain given, say, my total evidence, and I say that it's 0.6. Well, that means, according to the UL layout, that credence of 0.6 in rain today would be warranted given my total body of evidence. But what does warranted mean here? And I say that this means the same thing as you could express with a conditional imperative. If body of evidence E is one's total evidence, say, if one has my actual total evidence, then imperative accord rain credence 0.6. So I'm taking credence to be a psychic state, something that is the subject matter of a naturalistic psychology, but the psychology I'm talking about is pretty speculative. I take it to be the kind of psychic state explained by classical decision theory, by Ramsey, Savage, I think maybe the best version is Hammond's, as something involving dispositions. And then I want to say that the imperative, if E is one's total evidence, accord rain credence 0.6, expresses a state of what I'm going to be calling planning. Okay, so let me talk about expressing a state of planning. And the imperative that I wanted to explain was, in its general form, if E is one's total evidence, accord A credence X. Okay. And I'm saying that this expresses a state of what I'm calling planning. Planning to give the statement credence X for the case where E is one's total evidence. And to have such a credence in rain, say, is for one's dispositions to action to be constrained in a certain way, as I say, as explained by classical decision theory. So roughly half credence today disposes one to bend indifferently for or against A. So this involves the idea of expressing a state of mind. So we have to contrast expressing a state of mind and saying that I'm in that state of mind, in contrast that Ayer made. So suppose I say I have a house in Ann Arbor. Well, that's expressing a state of mind of mine, namely my belief that I have a house in Ann Arbor. And of course the statement is true in case I do have a house in Ann Arbor. But crucially, we can talk also about its sincerity condition. My statement is sincere if I believe that I have a house in Ann Arbor, even if I'm mistaken, that it's burned down without my knowledge. Okay. And then if I say to you, I have a house in Ann Arbor, you agree if you believe that I have a house in Ann Arbor. And this contrasts with my stating that I have that belief. I would state that I have that belief by saying, I believe I have a house in Ann Arbor. And that states that I have the belief as opposed to expressing the belief. So that statement is true just in case I do have this belief, regardless of whether the belief is true. And you agree with my statement if you believe that I believe that I have the house. So expressing a state of mind and what state of mind is expressed are characterized by sincerity conditions and agreement conditions. What can I say about the other subject, expressing creedal states like having non-negligible credence in rain? So as I say, this roughly fits us, at least roughly fits Sapienza's creedal expressivism and Swanson's constraint semantics. I say, for example, perhaps it will rain today. I thereby express having some credence in rain today in the sense of non-negligible credence. You agree if you too have some non-negligible credence in rain today, and saying perhaps it will rain today differs from saying I have substantial credence in rain today. That's the difference between expressing having substantial credence in rain today and saying that I have substantial credence in rain today. So in the case of saying that I have the belief, to agree is to believe that I have that credence, not to share the credence. So, as I say, expressing a state of mind is characterized by sincerity conditions and agreement conditions. I was using perhaps it will rain, which expresses having non-negligible credence in rain. The sincerity condition is that it's sincere. When I say it, if only if I have non-negligible credence in rain, and then the agreement condition, you, my audience, agree, but only if you too have some non-negligible credence in rain. And you could disagree by saying, no, surely it won't. And that would reject having non-negligible credence in rain. So let me give another case of credal expressivism. Suppose I say, likely as not, it'll rain. So this expresses having credence 1/2, or roughly 1/2 in rain. That has a sincerity condition that's sincere only if I have credence 1/2 in rain. It has an agreement condition, you agree, if only if you too have credence 1/2 in rain. And you can express disagreement. You can say, no, not likely as not. You could add more likely than not it will rain. Or you could add more likely than not it won't rain. So I'm claiming that there's a kind of straight disagreement expressible with no, not likely is not. And let me give another case. Suppose I say it's almost sure to rain. This expresses having high credence in rain. That's a sincerity condition, that it's sincere if only if the speaker has high credence in rain. And the agreement condition, the audience agrees if and only if the audience has high credence in rain. And again, the audience could express disagreement. No, it might well not rain. No, it might well not rain. And that expresses having less than high credence in rain. Another controversial case, but a case in my view, is indicative of conditional. Suppose I left a book out on the back deck and just realized that I left it there and I don't know whether it's rained. I could say, if it rained, the book is ruined. And that, I say, expresses high conditional credence in the book's being ruined, given that it rained. This has a sincerity condition having high conditional credence in ruin, given rain. And an agreement condition, you'll agree with me if you have high conditional credence in that the book is ruined, given that it rained. And you can express disagreement. You can say, no, even if it rained, perhaps the book isn't ruined. And that expresses having conditional credence in the book's being ruined, given that it rained, that's non-negligibly less than 1. Now, I've been talking about expressing states of mind, but I think we can emulate Stalnaker with modifications and talk about expression as shaping a kind of common ground in conversation. So I'll speak of disagreement in an aspect of credence, like having high credence in books being ruined given that it rained, and try to modify Stalnaker's picture of common ground. So Stalnaker's common ground, I forget its exact terminology, but it consists of propositions taken as believed in common. But we can let the common ground then consist in attitudes taken as shared in common. So belief in a proposition will be a special case of an attitude taken as shared in common, but another case could perfectly well be being against stealing. That would be the way to elaborate Ayer's theory of the meaning of stealing is wrong, or having at least not negligible credence in rain, or having at least not negligible credence in the books being ruined given that it rained. So this picture, just emulating Stalnaker, we could say that assertions shape the common ground. So we could say they not only express states of mind, but they put forth candidates for addition to the common ground. And others in the conversation can reject the proposed addition. So the word no, I take it as a sign of rejection. I don't know if it's, if I can say that it's invariably, in the most straightforward use, an expression of rejection of what's been, of the state of mind that's been expressed, but in many cases, at least it is, and barring some sort of dissent, the attitude now gets presupposed as shared, whether it's belief, full belief in a proposition, or partial belief, or disapproval, or various other things. So I'm saying that expressing, say, conditional credence is different from claiming warrant for it, but we have to ask, what's the difference? Well, what's the difference, for instance, between perhaps it will rain and non-negligible credence in rain is warranted, which is how I want to regiment the claim. The probability of rain is non-negligible. After all, the two are assertable in roughly the same cases, but I want to say that talk about probability, as I'm using the term, about what sort of credence in rain is warranted, has to be relative to a body of evidence, whereas things like perhaps are not relative to a body of evidence. They work in a different way. And as claims about what degree of credence is warranted are relative to a body of evidence, at least implicitly. So we could fill out non-negligible credence in rain is warranted, perhaps by saying non-negligible credence in rain is warranted by my evidence. And you could agree with that. You could say, yes, it is, but you haven't seen the new forecast. It probably won't rain after all. So in that case, you're agreeing. You're letting you're letting belief in some credence in rain is warranted by my evidence into the common ground, but you aren't letting perhaps it will rain into the common ground because you've said, well, here I'm using probably not in the normative sense, but in the credal expressive sense, and I don't think there's a sharp distinction between when we're using it in the two different senses. But anyway, if you express having less than full credence, less than high credence in rain, you aren't thereby disagreeing with non-negligible, or if you express disagreement with saying that non-negligible credence in rain is warranted by my evidence, you aren't necessarily, you may still dissent from having such credence. So, to it may rain, you say, no, surely it won't, and that disagrees with it may rain. It doesn't disagree with rain, with substantial credence in rain is warranted by my evidence. Okay, now I want to talk about truth, and this will be kinds of deflationary truth that we can understand in terms of agreement. So when we have, there's a question of what constitutes agreement or disagreement. I want to take that as a fairly primitive feature of psychology and conversational stance. And when we have agreement and disagreement, even if it's disagreement in attitude, as Stevenson talked about in the case of stealing is wrong, we have the first steps toward an expressivistic concept of truth. So expressivism, as I say, is the view that strategy to explain a concept, we explain what it is to believe a thought that involves that concept, true or false. And in that formulation, the meaning of true and false at the end are explain trivially by just saying that the word serves to express the belief that the thought is true, as any expression of a thought expresses belief in that thought. But then the crucial step in saying that in being an expressivist about truth is to say that to believe a thought true is to agree with it, and taking agreement as primitive rather than the word true, or the concept true as primitive. So expressivism requires a state of mind that a word is used to express. So Jamie Dreyer has the example of saying "Hi-yo, Bob" as a way of accosting Bob, and asks if we could change this to "Bob is hi-yo," and thus say that we've given a meaning for a statement "Bob is hi-yo." It doesn't work for accosting, clearly, but that's because there isn't a state of mind that hi-yo, in his example, is used to express. And then the state of mind has to be one that's subject to agreement or disagreement from other perspectives. So, say, having an itch would not be subject to this kind of expressivistic treatment, because there's no such thing as agreeing or disagreeing. There's no such thing as you're agreeing or disagreeing with my itch. So when we talk about agreement conditions for a sentence S, like it will rain, or suppose we talk about stealing is wrong, or in the sense of something being warranted. We're not trying to start with the notion of a truth condition, a set of possible worlds in which say it might rain would be true, where with possible worlds taken as maximally specific ways things might have been, or as the set of centered worlds from which it's true, maximally specific possible standpoints one might occupy. We're not starting that way. We're starting with an agreement condition. But this is going to be for what I'm calling full truth, the kind of truth that normative claims have on this expressivistic treatment, but perhaps claims and indicative if-then claims don't have. So an agreement condition will be a set of maximally decided states one might be in. Picturesquely, we can treat each such state as belief in a complete world, but the worlds here are virtual in the sense that this talk about belief in a world stems from talk about more basic things in the explanation, like the way things are naturalistically, and one's psychological state not expressed as belief in such and such, but explained, say, as approval or partial credence or something like that. I argued in both my books, Wise Choices and Feelings in 1990 and Thinking How to Live in 2003, that a set of possible worlds, in the case of straight prosaically factual belief, a set of possible worlds corresponds to a set of maximally decided states with paradigm beliefs. We can start from either direction. If we start analysis in terms of sets of maximally decided states, then we can analyze a larger range of things without believing in strangely non-natural states of affairs. So what can I say about expressive truth? Well, to say the thought he voiced is true is to express agreement with the thought, we can start saying, and to believe that the thought he voiced with that statement is true is to agree with the thought one takes and to have expressed. But this isn't enough to yield agreement conditions in the sense of decided states. And the example I've given is indicative conditionals. So I've been saying that I believe that if Stahlmacher came, he's hiding, just in case my conditional credence on he's hiding, given that he came, is roughly equal to 1. That's the Ramsey-Adams view. But I've argued, and I'll say a bit about this, there's no set of decided beliefs on all the non-conditional matters that constitutes this condition holding. So we should distinguish, as I said, grades of truth. Well, first, in my 1990 book, I thought that there was a kind of robust truth that normative claims didn't have. Now I think nobody really knows what robust truth is, and so I won't be using that notion. But there's the kind of bare deflationary truth that applies, for example, to the epistemic might, to perhaps, to epistemic if-then statements. So here we just say that to hold true is to agree, to hold false is to disagree. That's a kind of expressivistic explanation of the notion. And as I say, for this, the statement must express a state of mind, like disapproval or substantial credence, and it must be a state of mind that is subject to disagreement from various standpoints. And then what I'm calling full deflationary truth has this bare deflationary truth, but plus what I'm calling agreement conditions, that any decided state of mind would constitute either agreement or disagreement. So the contrast is between perhaps statements, epistemic conditionals, and so forth that don't have agreement conditions. Although one can agree or disagree, it's just that one can agree or disagree in every decided state, maybe in some decided states, but not in others. And hence these have only what I'm calling bare deflationary truth. And then moral statements are an example of things that do have agreement conditions, even on Ayer's emotivistic account, where there are expressions of approval or disapproval, because in a decided state, one's decided in one's approvals and disapprovals and holdings of approval and so forth. So in a decided state, one agrees or disagrees with disapproval. So wrong descriptions, even on Ayer's emotivistic account, which is the one I accepted exactly, have what I'm calling full deflationary truth. So take the usual case, say a disjunction, P or Q, where P might be at rain, Q would be at snowed, and one agrees in either of three states that are fully decided on whether it rained and whether it snowed. I agree if I believe it rained and disbelieve it snowed. If I believe both, it rained and it snowed. And if I disbelieve that it rained but believe that it snowed, and I disagree in the other state decided on those two matters, if I disbelieve that it rained and disbelieve that it snowed. So in any maximally opinionated state concerning whether it rained, whether it its node. One agrees or disagrees with the inclusive it rained or it snowed. So in the case of moralities, I've been saying Ayer says stealing is wrong means boo for stealing, not his words, but I think an accurate rendition of his view, where this boo for stealing expresses disapproval of stealing, and this has an agreement condition as a set of maximally decided states. It's a maximally decided state is maximally decided, fully decided on matters of non-moral fact or non-normative fact, and also fully decided in one's approval, disapproval, or neutrality toward any possible act. And as I say, this gives what we might call virtual possible worlds. So, for example, would be the virtual world where John stole and stealing is wrong. To believe in this world, we explain these virtual worlds just by explaining believing in them. To believe in it is to believe that John stole and to disapprove of stealing. I'm belaboring this partly because Jason Stanley keeps complaining that I haven't explained why I can hold that moral claims on my view are true or false in a sense in which indicative conditionals are not true or false. So with epistemic conditionals, again, they have no agreement or disagreement conditions. If one's certain that the antecedent is false, then one neither agrees nor disagrees, in my view. And that was what I tried to argue with my Slide Pete example a long time ago. So Pete's henchmen, Jack and Zach, may agree on how things almost surely are, namely that Pete didn't call and would have lost if he had, but they can accept incompatible conditionals. Jack, if Pete called, he won. I guess Zach, if Pete called, he lost. And this happens in the case I just described, where so long as what they know for sure is in Jack's case that Pete wouldn't have called unless he had a winning hand. So if he called, he won. And in Zach's case, what he knows for sure is that he had a losing hand. So if Pete called, he lost. So I'm claiming that other cases of bare deflationary truth include epistemic modals and the like, maybe statements, probably statements understood as acted like maybe, surely, just possibly. So to believe that perhaps will rain, I keep saying, is to give some non-negligible credence to its raining, and no state that constitutes agreeing with this is decided on whether or not it will rain. There is, I agree, a state of mind that constitutes agreeing with this, namely the state of having non-negligible credence in rain, but this state isn't decided on whether it will rain. Okay, so that's using the example of epistemic modals like might and words that function in a similar way. Turn back to epistemic warrant. I could say belief in natural selection wouldn't have been warranted for Hume. And the expressivistic proposal is saying that this expresses a plan of mine, in an extended sense of plan. Plan not to believe, given Hume's evidence, in natural selection. This statement, belief in natural selection wouldn't have been warranted for Hume, has full deflationary truth value. One agrees or disagrees if one has fully decided plans for credences given any epistemic circumstance, and fully decided beliefs as to Hume's epistemic circumstance and unlimited calculating power, I suppose. As I say, I'm using the word plan in a special sense. It's the one I used, I called accepting a norm in my 1990 book. These are contingency plans that may be for really wild contingencies like being Caesar at the Rubicon. I allow plans for states where we wouldn't normally speak of plans, like having non-negligent credence, planning to admire somebody for what she did. So, for instance, to use the example I used, a binge alcoholic might plan in this sense for abstinence, for a situation where he knows that, in fact, he's going to drink. So it isn't part of having a plan for a contingency that one believed that one's present thinking would affect what one did in that contingency. But I want to say plans do tend toward the state planned. You might have worry about this. We might say, well, plans, we can't plan for belief because, even in this extended sense, because we don't believe in will, we can't, I might plan whether or not to believe in dinosaurs, given Hume's evidence, but I can't acquire credence in dinosaurs and will, so how can I have plans for a degree of credence given Hume's evidence, even if I know what Hume's evidence was? But I want to characterize planning as a state of mind that tends in a characteristic way to cause the state of mind one plans for, not by causing one to will to be in that state, at least not in all cases. And indeed, even with plans for action, we have a like pattern. After all, having planned for what to do, if I have a plan for what to do right now, that tends to cause me to will the act. So if I have a plan for right now to take a sip of water, that tends to cause me to will to take a sip of water. That's a matter of, we might say, having an immediate intention or volition. But just as one doesn't will to believe, one doesn't will to will. So I don't will by willing to will. So I'm not willing at will. And what having the plan eventuates most directly in is my willing to take the sip of water at that time. So acting at will consists in willing the act, but not just in that, because I might suddenly be paralyzed unbeknownst to me. So it involves willing the act along with unconscious mechanisms that produce the willed movement. I'm calling this influence, or in Weisstrass's feelings, I call this influence normative governance. So this is the way that planning, in this sense, to be right now in a state of mind new, that might be a credal state, might be a state of approval, tends to bring it about that one is in the state. So examples are planning to admire, planning to believe, planning to act in a certain way, and planning to act tends toward willing the act in the same way that planning to admire tends toward admiring, and planning to believe tends toward believing. My speculation is that planning in this special sense is a psychological natural kind, and the theory of meaning, conditional on that speculation being right, is that normative descriptions express states of planning in this sense. So let me summarize what I've been saying about truth for credal claims. Statements of probability have full deflationary agreement conditions. They concern warrant for credence, that's with respect to a body of evidence, and if the audience has decided plans and beliefs, the audience agrees or disagrees, and hence these have agreement conditions which give rise to a kind of virtual truth conditions, so to speak. Whereas epistemic modals, epistemic conditionals, and the like have only bare deflationary truth. We can say that's true to agree, but in decided states, at least in some cases, we neither agree nor disagree. I want to say a word now about claims that I have reason to believe something. I think we can analyze this as normative in the same way. So the concept of reason to believe something, I'll say it's a matter of having reason to believe A as opposed to B. B might be not A, or it might be something else. And we should be able to talk about the strength of the epistemic reason to believe. So we want to say what it is to believe this kind of a statement in this kind of form. Consideration C is reason of strength sigma to believe A as opposed to B. So I'll take an example. Suppose Jill knows that an urn was chosen by a coin flip from two urns. One of the urns was 2/3 white and 1/3 red. The other was 1/3 white and 2/3 red. Jill knows nothing else. Okay. And then she observes that the first ball drawn is red. This is reason to believe that the urn is 2/3 red. And we can talk about how strong a reason it is. So the expressivistic gloss, I'll say, is that we can understand the claim that it's reason to believe as equivalent to the imperative. Weigh the observation you've made toward believing that the urn is 2/3 red. And this imperative expresses planning in this sense, to weigh the observation in that way. Well, that requires talking about epistemic weighing. I don't know how wide a range of cases this applies to, but I'll be following. I remember I.J. Good. If one conditionalizes on the new evidence, one multiplies one's odds of it's predominantly red to it's predominantly white. So she starts out with odds of 1 to 1. One multiplies this by the ratio of the likelihoods, which in this case doubles the odds. They now become 2 to 1. So we multiply this 1 to 1 odds by the ratio of one's credence in predominantly red, given the first ball drawn was red, to it's predominantly white, given the first ball drawn was red, and that ratio is 2 to 1. So we can say the weight one accords to that evidence as favoring belief in predominantly red as opposed to predominantly white. We could let it be any sort of log of this ratio, say, for simplicity in this case, the log to base 2. So when I say that the first balls being drawn being red is reason of strength 1 to believe in predominantly red as opposed to predominantly white. That means give that evidence weight 1 in favor of believing predominantly red as opposed to predominantly white. And this expresses a plan, so to weigh the evidence, where we've described weighing the evidence in terms of, in naturalistic terms, in terms of dispositions as explained by classical theory, decision theory, interpreted as specifying the shapes of dispositions. So I've been applying expressivistic ideas to credal claims into two subjects. One is credal statements with perhaps, indicative if then, and the like, and the other is normative claims of probability. And I've been saying that these contrast in the fullness of their truth and falsity. Perhaps statements, indicative if then statements and the like, although these credal have only bare deflationary truth, whereas probability claims, understood as normative claims, have full deflationary truth, even though the analysis I'm giving is expressivistic because it involves Warrant, and I give expressivistic analysis of claims in Warrant. So moral claims, even on Ayer's proving Mosevit's view, come out on the full deflationary truth side theory. So, I gave up the claim I made in 1990 that moral statements are neither true nor false in an important sense. That was my claim in Wise Choice and Feelings. I gave it up in Thinking How to Live, and became agnostic on whether there's such a thing as the robust truth that goes beyond what an expressivist accords to normative statements. But I continue to claim that epistemic conditionals are neither true nor false in a sense in which normative claims are true or false. Epistemic conditionals and the like do have bare deflationary truth, I admit, but they don't in general have full deflationary truth. So, thank you.
So we have around 20 minutes for discussion.
This might be a minor point, but can we go back to the slide with the agreement conditions for keyword student? 21?
Oh,
okay. So I agree. So it seems to me that there's something off there. So if I come out in the morning, it's above freezing, I see the streets are wet. Okay, I know it was cold last night, but I don't know how cold. It seems to me that I could, you could say it rained or it snowed last night, and I could agree with you, but it's not the case that I believe that it rained. It's not the case that I believe it snowed.
No, so I'm not saying that to agree with that, you have to be on a decided state.
Okay.
The normal story would be that I agree or not, even though I'm not in a decided state as to whether it rained, whether it snowed. What I'm saying is that the point here is if you are in a decided state, then
Okay, so
convince you to.
okay, so these are the agreement conditions for if you're in a decided state. So
Right.
how do I extend those to agreement conditions when I'm not in a
Okay.
decided state?
Well, when I'm using term agreement conditions here, I'm not talking about the, maybe this isn't the ideal terminology, but I'm not talking about the conditions under which I agree that perhaps it rained or something like that. I'm talking about the agreement conditions in a way that we can make correspond to the truth conditions by making the conditions under which one is if one the conditions of decided decided states of mind that would constitute agreement complement is the state is the decided states of mind that constitute disagreements.
Okay,
So yes, I'm saying when you agree perhaps it rained, you're agreeing, but not in the sense that I talked about when I talk about agreement conditions.
okay, so so once I have these agreement conditions, that's expressed in terms of the maximally decided state, is there a next way to go from those to agreement conditions when I'm not in a maximally decided state?
Well, I think of your not being in a maximally decided state as having degrees of credence in each of the maximally decided states. Of course, if there are going to be too many maximally decided states, to think of that as a state of having such credence separately for each one. But one's epistemic state, and then taking it in a highly idealized case, gives a credence measure over the fully decided states. And then having certain credence measures involves giving high probability to a conditional believing perhaps it rained, things like that.
Bill?
So your maximally decided states are what Savage would call the small worlds?
Yeah, we could run these either as big worlds or small worlds.
But they're the worlds. They have this.
Well, when we talk about worlds, we're using a different mode of expression. So Stoneacre talks about possible worlds as maximally specific ways things might have been. I'm taking it as sort of understood maximally specific ways things might have been naturalistically, including psychologically. I'm not taking it as understood what a maximally specific way things might have been normatively is, and then we say, well, we just as we can talk indifferently about belief in a maximally specific way things might have been, and agreement with the claim that things are that way. So in cases where the claim that things are that way is considerably problematic, we can start out by talking about being in a maximally decided state of mind, and so about agreement conditions in this restricted sense of maximally decided states that would constitute agreeing and would constitute disagreeing, and then that allows us to talk as if there are maximally specific ways things might have been normatively.
So what about
Well, well, to a first approximation, I think that those are propositional in the sense of having full agreement conditions, and then to a second approximation, I take what I seem to remember of something you suggested to me 25 years ago, that maybe those two have sort of degrees of acceptability. The basic subjunctive conditional involves chance, and is a chancy subjunctive conditional, the chance of the atom of the Geiger counter clicking, if it were put in that position, would be such and such. So then we might be expressing the expectation of that chancy conditional, but to a first approximation for most cases, the subjunctive conditionals, I think. Well, first, my view is that subjunctive conditionals act quite differently from epistemic conditionals, and that they're pretty well explained as nearness conditionals in a Stalnaker-Lewis sort of way. And so I was talking here entirely about epistemic conditionals, and I think for the most part, at any rate, indicative conditionals are epistemic conditionals.
On conditionals a little more. So how committed are you to the idea that in every case, if one thinks that the antecedent is false, then one neither disagrees or agrees? Because I was thinking about the Stalnaker campaign. Stalnaker's here; he's in disguise. Right. And it seems to me that I ought to be able to agree to that, even if I'm quite sure he isn't here, because after all, I sort of look around and I can eliminate every possibility of him being, of the undisguised Stalnaker being here. And so I mean, I'm sure that there are lots of cases where we want to say exactly what you say, but I'm just interested whether or not you might be willing to sort of allow cases where,
well, I mean, there's a different kind of case where, of course, I allow, namely, indicative conditionals with true antecedents. I could perfectly well allow it for indicative conditionals where the antecedent entails the consequent. That specific example, you have to have a pretty far-fetched case, but if somebody who hadn't seen Stalnaker but was sufficiently sure that he never disguises himself, might be more doubtful of whether his perceptual apparatus, his face recognition apparatus was working, than Stalnaker isn't here undisguised. So I think you could give at least far-fetched cases there, somebody who agrees with us perfectly well about how things almost surely are, but accepts an incompatible indicative conditional.
But if I just so one of the, I mean, I guess I take it that one of the functions of this kind of an indicative condition is to sort of express what kind of things we might have evidence for, right? So I might look around and say, if Stalnaker's here, he's in disguise. He isn't here, of course, but and it seems not unreasonable to agree to that on the grounds that what I've kind of said is, look, if he's here, none of us have any evidence for it. And that's sort of what the function of the conditional is there.
Yeah, yes, and but doesn't that follow from the Ramsey-Adams sort of analysis? We know that you would give any noticeable credence at all to Stalnaker's being here in disguise. So you're expressing, of course it may be a rhetorical flourish, but let's
Not really,
take it straightforwardly, you're expressing a high conditional credence that stall anchors being in disguise on as being here, given that you have virtually negligible credence as being here in disguise, then we infer that you believe he's not here.
Yeah. Okay.
It seemed like your view would only be nicer if you didn't have to restrict to the extremal states in your agreement conditions. So I was wondering what you take the motivation for the restriction to be. Is it the lottery paradox, and would you be happy to have a rule for assertability that wasn't subject to it?
I've never been a great fan of the lottery paradox as showing us anything much. I think belief is credence not significantly different from one for the matter at hand, and and I don't care much if setting up lottery paradox requires you just to keep changing the matter of hand, or whether belief in that sense in a large number of things doesn't rationally require belief in their conjunction. It's C.P. Hume has a discussion of this, not in those terms, but I remember being a bit of a fan of Hume's discussion. I guess I think in a lottery case you have high credence, and each ticket didn't win, zero, or close to zero credence that no ticket won, and there's nothing paradoxical about that, and that's what you say about in terms of the word belief with no qualification doesn't much matter.
I see. Then what's the motive for restricting the states to the extremal ones?
Like restricted.
In the agreement condition, why?
I'm just saying there's an important contrast here to be drawn between belief that lets you speak of truth conditions in a deflationary sense, and agreement that certainly we call agreement, and that's perfectly okay, and I take it that's the same notion as I'm taking as primitive in the other case, but agreement of a kind that, or agreement in a context where you can't get virtual truth conditions out of it. So what I'm trying to explain is the sense in which you can be an emotivist and believe in a kind of truth for moral statements like stealing is wrong, but still not believe in truth in the same sense for an indicative conditional or perhaps statement. Does that make sense?
I guess I still don't see why you wouldn't have done the same thing with non-extremal states.
Well, because the question is, there are ways the world might, well, the example, there are ways the world might be with respect to whether it rained last night and whether it snowed last night. And so as long as we can say what it is to agree with the disjunction given each of those states that one might be in, we can speak of the truth conditions for it rained or it snowed, whereas so just as I agree with it, if it in case I believe that it rained and disbelieve that it snowed. Also, I could say it's true in case it rained but didn't snow. Whereas I can't do that with if the Ramsey-Adams view is right and indicative conditional in general, and I can't do that with the perhaps statement. I can't say, well, here are the virtual truth conditions for the perhaps statement. I could say it's true if perhaps it rained, but that's not the same as getting a set of maximally specific ways things might have been with respect to rain and snow, such that if things have been that way with rain or snow.
I think what Kevin was asking is similar to what I'm asking. I'm still not quite sure what the answer is. So if Kevin says it rained or it snowed last night, and neither one of us is in maximally efficient state, what are the agreement conditions for that? What conditions do I have to satisfy in order to be in agreement with them?
Well, there's nothing to. There's not much to say. When you agree with it, if you don't reject the possibility that it will either rain or snow, and you allow at least one of the other possibilities, and that's about all there is to say there.
Okay, so in order to agree with his so he says it rained or it snowed, and for me to agree with that, he is to hold perhaps it snowed or perhaps it rained or both. Is that it?
So one thing you could say is that to agree with it is to be in a state such that any maximally decided state you could move to without changing your mind about it, even would be a maximally decided state in which you believe that it rained or